Hello, everybody, and welcome to World Smithing, where we take a concept and world build it. I'm Cody.
And I'm Joe. And do you hear that clinking off in the distance?
Yeah, I hear
Why
it.
it's the lovely sound of people smithing a world.
The whole world.
But before we talk about that, hey Cody, how have you been, friend?
I have been well. How have you been?
I've been all right, thanks. You getting up to anything nerdy lately?
Oh, I'm always getting into nerdy shenanigans. I've been watching a new game that kind of makes me want to jump into the Souls series.
Ooh.
I hate it because I know that I'm not good enough for those types of games. I'm just like
Uh-huh.
my brain cannot fathom it. But there's an indie game that came out called Mortal Shell, and
Interesting.
it is a development team of about, I think, 12 people, I want to say.
Huh.
So, very small group, but it is a very polished looking Souls like game where, like, you go around and the combat's tough but rewarding. There's all sorts of neat mechanics. I'm not familiar with the Souls series, um, but from what I'm understanding, from what people are saying online, is this is kind of like Souls Light, right? Or like
Okay.
Diet Souls. It's not quite the full experience of a Dark Souls type game, but if you want to get your feet wet, this one is got that same like atmospheric storytelling where they don't tell you a whole lot. They mostly just kind of show you the story through various items, and you kind of have to like glean stuff from conversations you have. It's got that very like every like the atmosphere is very moody and dark, and like there's all sorts of like creepy monsters and things that you got to fight.
Hmm.
And you play as like a zombie thing that like takes over the shells of dead people. It's kind of what you're kind of like a spirit possessing a dead body. um
Interesting.
and the way you like what's kind of neat is that when you level up, you're just learning more about the dead person that you're inhabiting. So like there's little stories that you learn about the different shells you can pick up. And it seems really cool, and I kind of want to get into it, but like also I'm really bad at games. I wouldn't say I'm terrible at them, but like I would be bad at it, and I know I would get frustrated. If you watched me play Vulcan, you'll know what I mean. Um, so yeah, I've been watching that game, and that seems really cool. Um, but we'll see how I'm feeling about that. And then Persona 5, I'm still going through that game.
Ooh.
Finally at the point where I know nothing about the game anymore. I'm everything at this point is blind. No, I like
Okay.
because I've played the game before, up to about this point on the original game, and now I'm playing the kind of deluxe edition that came out, which
Hmm.
added a lot of stuff that I was like, ooh, cool. And so yeah, I've been playing that on Twitch or well, as much as I can, but Sundays and Mondays. But what about you? What nerdy stuff have you been getting up to?
Oh man, I'm reading some old school comics at the moment.
Nice.
Um, I I have been watching various like DC cartoons and some of their cartoon movies with one of my friends from school, from college. And he was telling me a little bit about Alan Moore's Saga of the Swamp Thing.
Oh,
So it sounded intriguing and I wanted to read it. Kind of comes from this like weird collection of the characters, which I guess are now kind of being referred to as Justice League Dark,
huh.
um, which is like their kind of like magic realm. So it's characters like Constantine and Zatanna and a character named Deadman, who is a dead man.
What? I
And
couldn't possibly believe that.
one of my personal favorite characters is Etrigan the Demon, who is a demon from the King Arthur times, and the his gimmick is that he is bound to a gentleman who is now immortal because he has a demon soul inside of him. And he every time he says a rhyme, Etrigan comes out, and Etrigan has to rhyme everything he says. But yeah, so Saga of the Swamp Thing.
Oh,
It's kind of a weird book. I'm still pretty early on in it, but um, I will say like I've read Watchmen, um, and
shocking.
yeah, right. Um,
I've
but
even read Watchmen.
the thing about this book is the way that they do the page layouts is super crazy. Like words will just kind of be floating in text boxes that aren't necessarily like connected to anything. Um, just like the general page layout. So I'm actually using my like in this app called Hoopla um to read the comic, and they do this thing which I think is really cool called dynamic pages where it will like zoom in on the individual panels.
Okay.
But a thing that frustrates me about it is that like at no point does it like pull all the way back so you can see the whole panel again.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it will do it on my laptop but not on my Kindle for whatever reason. Um, so it's interesting because it's like, um, especially with this comic, like the page layout is like half the storytelling. So I kind of am like jumping back and forth to make sure that I didn't turn the page so I don't like miss a really interesting or crazy page layout.
Right, right.
It's what people come to worldsmithing for, to hear Joe complain about digital comics apps.
Those
Uh,
dang newfangled comic book apps don't work the way I want them.
it's true. It's pretty good old man voice.
I mean, it's all right. It's kind of like a decrepit old man, I think. Like, I think a.
I mean, I would say like Prospector.
Yeah,
Well,
definitely like why like definitely like there's something wrong with this individual, but you can't quite place it yet.
that is true.
Right.
So it's like an NPC in a Cody campaign.
I'm okay. All right. Yeah, guess what? Everyone's fucked up in my campaign, but like that's life.
But anyway, hey Cody, are we
Yeah.
gonna smith some worlds?
We are going to smith some worlds on a grand scale. We're going to do the macro episode of Woodbury Monastery, which is
Yeah,
we're going to talk about some key elements that are going to kind of lay the groundwork for how we imagine the micro level, the smaller cities and the people and all these kinds of things. So I wanted to start with the origin story, how this world came to be, because this will be important later.
that's true.
In the distant future, humanity has come to a breaking point. Technology, magic, and greed have come to an apex in civilized life. In a great big flash, the world as we knew it was gone. Suddenly and without warning, a wave of energy swept across Earth and wiped out all human life. In this moment, something extraordinary happened. While humans were wiped off the face of the earth, suddenly, animals of every shape and size began to change. After the energy dispersed, animals began to grow vastly more intelligent and empathic, and some even began to experience physical and emotional change. At first, things are chaotic and unpredictable, but over time, the newly evolved animals began to build communities, create tools, and thrive. Our story begins at the very early stages of one of the very first communities. Many predatorial animals are still adjusting to this newly found intellect, but many animals have begun to thrive together. So that is our origin story, how things came to be. Um,
Yes.
this is kind of a post-apocalypse kind of world when you kind of pull it back. So there are going to be kind of some elements of the old human society and things like that, but also this is about the animals, so we've kind of created this origin story as a way to focus what we're actually talking about instead of like just kind of being like, oh, and then this and then this and then this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But next we'd like to talk about the creation myth, what
Yeah.
animals believe has happened and why we are, or why they are the way they are now.
Hmm. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna take care of this, or rather half of this. So I'm talking about the mythology, the creation myth of the the sort of the pets, the animals that were, which re- full disclosure out the bat, we know that there are lots of different kinds of pets out there, and things like that. But this is focusing on some various pets. So there are three primary sects. There are three primary belief systems of the large animals. Their stories are similar, but the details show how they have formed their different beliefs and the societies that have come up around it. So long ago, there were great beings, gods who walked amongst us. They had spectacular magics that we couldn't comprehend. There were boxes that created sounds and light that could frighten or shock us. Sometimes the gods would get angry with these boxes and could destroy the small worlds that existed inside of them. They had loud servants that would scare us as they would move around the house with bright lights and loud sounds. And they had magical things that could move us places much faster than our legs could take us. But one day, a great plant made of fire came from high above the world. It was red and angry and made the whole world shake, and the gods screamed out in fright. Some of the gods disappeared entirely. Others, over time, became quiet and fell into rest, sleeping for all time. And as time went on, as this world needed someone to take care of it in its stead, we began to develop our own thoughts and our own speaking, our own ways of seeing and controlling the world. But here's where the stories differ. So, group one is called the Guiding Leash. To the Guiding Leash, the gods were benevolent creatures. They provided for our ancestors food and exercise, entertainment. We worked together with the gods to give everyone a happy and beneficial life. Now that the gods have left us, it has become our responsibility to shepherd all other creatures, great and small, to live their best lives. We are stronger together. We provide for one another, and together we will make the world a better place. The second group is referred to as the ambivalent testers. While it is true that the gods provided us with food, that does not mean that they were our betters. The gods gave us many tests over the years, creating for us independence and a sense of self reliance. Our ancestors even figured out ways to manipulate the gods using different tones and bodily movements. Over time, we learned that we could get them to do what we wanted when we wanted them to do it. When they left, they simply gave us another test. It is not our goal to help any others. Our goal is to make sure that we live the strongest and best lives. This does not mean that we actively intimidate or hurt others, but we are all independent creatures, and we all work alone. And then the third sect is called the Caged Ones. The gods kept our ancestors in cages. We were prisoners to their whims, and as such, we owe them nothing, and the world they created nothing as well. To live your best life is to build a new world, nothing like those who came before us. So those are my three kind of the various pets and how they kind of viewed the world of the humans and the religions that they built out of this. So.
And I was responsible for tackling the creation myth of the animals outside. And while each animal, each species, each conglomeration may have had its own various ideals and beliefs, too many to count, they all have a very similar beginning in their creation myth. The early stages of this new animal life were chaotic, difficult, and demanding. Many creatures suddenly had an intellect to question what was before considered normal. Many of the woodland creatures outside of town in the nearby forest remember the stories of the scions, beings of vast intelligence and power that lived before the Great Change and suddenly vanished. To many of the woodland animals, these great scions were beings of unknowable power, intelligence, and intent. In most cases, it was best to avoid the scions whenever possible. In the minds of most animals, these great eldritch creatures would soon kill, enslave, or help you, depending on their whim. Some theorize that the scions granted this land to the animals, while others believe that the scions merely left this place in search for another. While beliefs vary from species and location, it has become common terminology to refer to the ones who are no longer with them, the scions, and that when they left, they brought upon the awakening or the evolution of animals. Yeah. So I would go into the nitty gritty of all of those, but we will find out probably in the next micro episode that while they all have varying different ideas of how to live, the creation myth amongst most of them is more or less the same.
Oh, did I go too micro
No, 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 no.
in
I
my
I
thing?
like
Okay.
that because the thing about the at least the way I saw it, and I think the way we both saw it when we were discussing how we do this, is that outside life is very much different from the pet
Mm,
life of being inside. So of course we were going to have very different ways to tackle this, and how these
sure.
various animals kind of saw this origin story unfold. So this is perfect.
Awesome. Okay, and now, one other thing that I'm gonna
Yeah.
be talking about is life in Woodbury monastery kind of goes without a hitch, but rumors have been growing over time of a special kind of animal, one that uh, is kind of beyond all explanation, beyond all understanding, and we refer to them as the touched. Um, so over the years, as the world continued to develop, there were some who started behaving strangely or doing things that were beyond understanding. The ability to manipulate others, to control the world around them by creating elements. Yet, unlike the pharaohs who live in the wastes, nothing about them is strange or extraordinary. Quite the opposite, in fact. They are perfectly normal beings who have unexplained abilities. Depending on where you live, the touched are either considered new prophets of the gods, helpers who might lead us to a better world, or they are seen as pariahs and the people fear their powers, seeing them as sick or cursed, making a mockery of the world that we have built and a mockery of the world that has come before us. Woodbury Monastery allows the touched to live amongst us, but there is a promise. They are not allowed to use their powers unless faced with extraordinary circumstances.
Hmm. I like it. It's very cool. But
So yeah,
I think yeah, that is our macro episode. Those are our sweeping things. And while our explanations of them might feel shorter than like our standard episodes, it is worth noting that our origin story, our creation myth, and our the select individuals, the touched, are all going to be a huge part of what we do next. Like we did with Fantasy Egypt, like we did with the Moon Base. All the reason we start macro and then work and then kind of get those ideas ready and then work
get small.
micro is so that we can make sure that there's cohesion, if you will. At least that's always been my understanding of the way that I've been world building, is that you get your big sweeping, like, what is true about your world first, so that when you come in on the micro level, you know exactly how you should build the, like when we build
Hmm.
Woodbury Monastery and like what they believe in and all those things, we can take from these creation myths, our origin story, the touched, and we can start to build upon those ideas. And when we do decide to flip the script or change it, we know why we did that. We have our
Yep.
kind of themes and our big sweeping ideas to kind of help out with this particular part of the world building exercise.
Yeah, and I think another thing that's important to kind of note or talk about is the idea that when you're world building, you on sort of the macro level, you're kind of trying to come up with things to assist in what is going to make that what is going to end up being important for the players and the situations that you're going to put them in, right?
Yeah,
So, for instance, when we did Fantasy Egypt, the idea is, so like, what about this world is still fantastical? Like, is there, so we developed the fact that there was still um like an Egyptian kingdom hidden amongst the, kind of like a light urban fantasy thing. And so that kind of becomes central to what that group was talking about. They're trying to, preserve these traditions and preserve this culture. With the moon base, it's really important to figure out how did we get here, and how that drives a conflict. So with the thing, something like Woodbury Monastery, the beliefs that these individuals bring to it kind of shape the way that the world is going to work and how your party members are going to see and interact with the world and how they're going to kind of move forward. So in this case, kind of bringing a level of religion and religiosity to the world is important because it's a monastery. Chances are that your characters are going to start off at least ostensibly some kind of vowed religious or holy people, and if they're not necessarily vowed religious or holy people, they are working in this world, which means that they have a certain level of belief. And so that's important, right? The way that they sort of viewed the way the world worked before them is going to really impact, their belief system, much like the the paladin class or the cleric class. Like the ways that they kind of view the world impact the kinds of magics that they do or the kind of skills that they bring to the table. It's a similar concept, right? Because
right,
if you're of the guiding leash, then you're going to be working together with others. But if the idea is that you're part of like the caged ones, and the idea is like, why are we even trying to recreate what came before us? What came before us was horrible, and this is now our opportunity to build and make it better, or maybe even the opposite. It's like we have to burn it all down and make something that is truly our own. Why are we even trying to replicate those who came before us? Um, that's important for building cultures and building characters, moving forward in the story. So
yeah. And also, it's a good point to, like, this is how conflict is born, right? It's very obvious with the kind of three devout ideals of the pet sector of animals, that the guiding leash, you know, are going to be very different from those who are caged, and the people, the animals living outside may kind of be this neutral party where they don't necessarily care about what the scions did, and like that will create conflict. It can create enemies, it can create powerful allies. Like there's a lot of things that you can take from these to build into your micro episode, or to your micro world building, and then
hmm
build into that first session, or like the very first like kind of big quest that the party will go on, if this is kind of like more than just a one shot kind of a deal.
hmm yeah. So when looking at your world, I think it's always important to figure out what is the thing what is the thing that your players are going to be the most curious about,
Right.
right? because that also is something that drives mystery going forward as well. So hey, if you're a bunch of vowed religious, animals living in the world, it's pretty important to figure out how we got here, how we developed these belief systems, um, how these belief systems impact the way that you live or the way that you view your neighbor, things like that. Um, so in any case, like these are all pretty important things to figure out. Um, so yeah,
Yeah, that's all I got, man. That's a good starting jump point for when we
yeah,
do our micro episode, and
I
therefore
agree. So yeah, if that there we have it. Hey Cody, if someone listened to this episode and they liked it and they wanted to learn more, where's a place that they could learn more?
they can go to our website at www.fandomroulette.com, where all of our episodes go live as we update them. And we go through a rotating 4 shows. So if you liked worldsmithing and you want to get more of our stuff, you can find the other shows that we're doing as well. And if you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's a little form you can fill out with just your internet tag, whatever your name is online, and whatever it is you want to talk to us about. But that area can be used to give us ideas for what our next world building episode or world smithing series after this one.
Yeah. And hey, if someone if someone's interested in listening to the episode, they don't necessarily use the same podcast app that you use. Where are some places that people can find this episode so they can start listening to it?
We are on all sorts of places. We're on YouTube, we're on SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher. We are on all of your RSS feeds. All you got to do is search Fandom Roulette.
Yes. And hey, if people want to reach out to us and send us a funny meme or check in on our schedule or send us a suggestion or a thought, what are some various social media platforms where they can find us?
Well, they can tweet at us at fandomr_podcast. That is our Twitter handle. They can also search for us on Facebook and Instagram. All you got to do is search Fandom Roulette.
Also, please remember to like, rate, review, and subscribe.
Yeah.
Um, ring the bells. All that great stuff. Please leave a comment.
Yeah.
Tell a friend. Spread the word. Because anytime we get a good review or a nice comment, that helps us move up the ranks, so more people can discover us and learn about us, and we can keep growing the show and bringing you some more of this kind of fun stuff.
Yeah, and we
Um,
appreciate you guys listening to us. You could be listening to 1,000 different podcasts. You could be watching whatever kind of shows you want, but you chose to be here instead, and we appreciate that. So thank you.
yeah. And thank you so much for listening to this episode of Phantom Roulette. Signing off for Phantom Roulette, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.